Wait a minute. What's so amazing about Grace?
You are listening to All Things Grace podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Michelle Majors. This podcast is dedicated to answering one question: how can we move through life with more ease and flow and grace? How do we bring grace to family drama, our careers, our bodies, and health? What about racism and oppression? Or the most challenging of them all, ourselves? It's all about grace, y'all. Let's talk about it. Hey everyone, thank you for joining us this week. Today is the first day of Black History Month, or as we Black folks call it, Black History Life. Today we're digging into a very real subject matter for Black women. We're going to be talking about grace within the frame of Black women and why we seem to get so little of it. It's going to be a great conversation, I can promise you that. Joining us today is Alexandria Butler, and also goes by Lexi B. Lexi B is a self-proclaimed freedom fighter and also a leader in building executive leadership and workplace equity in the tech industry. So she's going to share her story, but after several years of working in some of these big tech companies in Silicon Valley, she decided to create a sister circle, and it's called Sister Circle Black Women in Tech. And initially, it was a way for her to meet other Black women in the tech to be mentored. But as they, given that they make up less than 3% of the tech workforce. But to this day, this community has grown to over 16,000 members, and like this global online community, just sharing thoughts and insights and challenges, tips, opportunities. And it's just growing from there. So it is my pleasure to have with us today, Lexi B. Lexi, thank you for being here.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about your background and what brought you to tech.
Great question. So I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, which is very, very dear and close to my heart. I am always a Midwestern girl at heart forever. And then when I was 18, I went to college in the Bay Area, which really opened my experience into the tech world. I went to a school that a lot of people say was the school that helped really build out the Silicon Valley. And so at the school that I went to for my undergraduate degrees, even if you did not work in tech, or even if you did not want to be in tech, you knew exactly what tech was, to the point that it was weird if you didn't want to be in it. You had to run away from it. And so I didn't want to be in tech. I was the one who ran away from it. And if you want to make the ancestors laugh, tell them your plans. And I ended up in tech. So I started out 3 weeks after graduation as an engineering program manager at a major tech company, learning what engineering was. I did not go to school for engineering. And just really also just adulting and growing up and figuring out my life. And I don't think that we have enough public conversations about the difficulty and the layeredness, the complexities of just growing up, right? Yeah. And so navigating all those feelings. I was there for about 4.5 years. And then I started at a company called Airbnb, which at the time was a small startup, but everybody knew about it. I went to Airbnb at a time where everybody knew its name. Its brand was on point. And whether or not people were using the app, people knew exactly what it was, which is a very interesting time to be at a startup. To be at a company that's very small, but everybody knows exactly what you do. And that's a very, very cool time from a business standpoint. When I was at Airbnb, I really started feeling like my career was going to go someplace. I had a little bit more language and more verbiage about the things that I want and what I didn't want. And I started realizing that my career growth, 90% of it had nothing to do with more education or more skills. You're always going to acquire more skills. If you just keep working, that just comes naturally without even trying. But it really had to do with how in which I worked, how in which I said things, how in which I reacted to things. And as this dark-skinned Black girl from St. Louis, Missouri, from a culture and a people that historically we do not passive aggressively speak to each other. We do not do subtext between the text.
Yeah.
Right. And then also just my personality. I don't do that either. I realized very quickly, in order for me to move up, I'm going to have to learn that. I'm going to have to learn to read people without actually reading people. I'm going to have to learn to professionally cuss people out because they are just actively deciding to be violent in this room with me. I'm going to learn, I'll be required to learn how to state my boundaries without it coming across as, oh, Lexi said no, even though Lexi actually just told you no, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't have anyone at work that could teach me that. I had a lot of people that could teach it to me, but because they were not Black women, how in which they do it, so therefore how in which they are received in a room, I was keenly aware in my mid to late 20s, I could not do that exact same thing and get the same response.
Exactly.
And so I decided to start a simple Facebook group, not to build an organization, but to go to brunch with other Black women in my industry and say, okay, so how do I say that? How do you say it? And what have you learned from that experience? And, you know, if you could tell yourself at my age and at my point of my career, what would you do differently? And so it came from this selfish place of someone tell me how to get paid because I don't know, right? And then what happened with that is that it's now over like 16,000 women all over the world. And so it is an organization. And I always tell folks, Sister Circle Black Women in Tech is an underground railroad for Black women in corporate spaces. And it's the place where we can actually have real conversation about how to navigate hard things, how to navigate great things, how to talk about work-life balance, how to talk about being a mommy, trying to become a mommy, not wanting to be a mommy, having to talk about negotiations, having to ask somebody for a referral, and all of these things and these layers of what it means to be a Black woman and what it means to create your own dream for yourself. And so to have 16,000 women around the world who support you in this development of your own dream, and then are there to say, okay, cool. So your dream is X. How can we support that dream? Is a very transformative and beautiful feeling.
You know, this is something that so many of us, and whether you're talking about tech or not, so many of us as Black women are trying to find our way. And every organization has its culture that you have to then learn how to show up in, right? And so as you were talking, what came to mind was having been in corporate America and having to understand and learn a whole different language to get the simplest things done. Because no from me sounds a whole world different than no from my white counterpart. And they don't have to think about what their no is. I have to think about. So I write in my book about a neighbor who came by, and I was working in my front yard and came by and felt the need to compliment me on how nice my yard was. And it was a white man. And he said, not only is it just really great and, you know, wow, but I really just have to, I'm such an ass. And I just have to say this, that I've had so many judgments about living among Black neighbors. And basically you have turned that idea and that notion on its head. And so I just feel really bad about it. I feel like an ass about it and just wanted to tell me. Now, I talk about this decision tree. One, I can cuss them out. Now, if I cuss them out, I don't want to do that. I love my neighborhood. I love my neighbors. This is my joy place. And it's great right now. If I do that, that will change the dynamics. It just will, right? Especially as the only Black family in this community. Right. So can't do that. Do I tell my 6'3" Black husband, babe, you know what they said?
Yeah.
Can't do that. That could be death. You see where I'm going, right? Do I say, hey, sir, you know, what you're doing is called exceptionalizing. And you just basically and here's why it's problematic. I do that all day. I just want to work in my yard. I'm off the clock. I'm not doing that. You know, so and we're talking about this in more linearly, but it's a 6 second. It's 6 seconds. You okay. Here's what I'm gonna do, and so the only thing I could think to say was, okay. I put and just kept doing what I was doing. He stood there for a minute, thinking I was gonna say more. No, that's actually it. Okay, and kept doing what I was doing. Right, but no clue that basically he was telling me, oh, you're one of the good ones. And I approve of you. Right.
Which is even deeper,
Which is right. He's telling me you have made me think differently about my experience. Therefore, congratulations, you've passed. You're one of the good ones, and cool.
You passed the test that I've created. Yes, exactly.
You passed the test that I've created that I didn't know I was taking. Right.
That you never asked me if I wanted to take in the first place.
Or if I wanted to know the results.
Right.
Right.
Wow.
Well, he was in this whole world and then he dumped it on me.
Yeah.
Now left it to me to process and figure out, Now, what I can tell you is that a lot of times this is this could have been his way of saying, hey, neighbor, I like the way you keep your yard. Hey, what is that? Just say that.
Period. Hey, I noticed that you put so much time into this because I walk by all the time and the flowers are phenomenal. Period. Thank you.
Thank you. We're both affirmed. You have now connected with your neighbor. We're both happy, right? But there was this need to that other, and not really knowing, right, that's part of this conversation that we're talking about today, and that's grace and Black women. Right. And I think that the way you give Black women grace, I think sometimes looks like that.
Yes.
Right. Maybe that was his way of saying, wow, I'm giving you grace because you're one of the good ones or ... whatever it is. But it's such a challenge. But then on the flip side of this conversation about grace is, Serena Williams, who's having her baby. And she's like, nope, something's going on. And they're like, you're good. And she's like, I know my body. She told them, I need this kind of scan. I need this and I need this and I need some extra this. And she told them what she needed. And had she not advocated for herself, she could have lost the baby, could have lost her life. And the point to that whole story is that she's the person in power and they didn't believe her. Right. So those of us who know that we have to advocate, but we have to do it in a way that is pleasing to you and that you can hear it. Right. And so my question for you is, as you've been moving through your spaces, where have you been afforded grace? Where have you found like, okay, I'm in a space of grace? And where have you been really challenged? Where have you noticed that grace was not present for you, but it was present for someone else, maybe?
That's a great question. I think that grace is never present for me 100%. I live in an active space of not receiving grace because of what I look like, because of what I say. I always tell people the higher up I get in my career, the less I care. And for the record, I'm not giving people the approval to be their biggest authentic selves at work. I also always tell people, I don't want to see your most authentic self at work. How you interact with your spouse or your lover should be different than how you interact with your kids. That should be different than how you interact with your mother or your grandmother. That should be different than how you interact with the neighbor in the corner, and should be different than how you interact with your coworkers. I want to put that out there, right? But as I do think there is a conversation that we don't talk enough about within marginalized communities in the corporate space about the higher you do go up, you do get a little more giver of no Fs because you can, because you're in a position of power. And so therefore you can do more and you can say more and you can push back more than you could at 22. And I'm very aware of that because I'm always fighting for the me at 22 when no one fought for me. So I'm always in this state of not receiving the same grace as others, whether or not the people who do not give me that grace recognize they do or do not. I know that, right? I'm always in this state of, I'm clearly aware I have to work 3 times as hard to get the same thing. I'm also aware that in my career, I would not be where I was because, I am a human being first, regardless of creed, race, the food my mama made me, sexuality, gender. I am a human first. And therefore I make tons of mistakes.
Yeah.
I would not be where I am in my career if there were not specific people who have given me grace when I mess up. If there have not been specific people, Black and white, of all different layers and flavors and colors and places where they're from, who have not literally respectfully grabbed me in a hallway and pulled me into a conference room and been like, you can't do that. And so I do not want to make this narrative of no one gives me grace and I'm always perfect, because that is institutionally inaccurate. What I am saying is systemically, no one gives me grace. And there are these phenomenal people that have been in my life who in many ways are still in my life, whether or not we work together still, who are constantly giving me grace, constantly showing me the way, constantly saying that was wrong and you can do better and this is how you're going to do it, constantly create spaces of safety for me where I can be my most authentic self and just scream and cry and be like, but I did it this way because of blah, 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 right? And then they can actually hear the intent and they can hear the why. And then the response is, I got it. How in which you showcase that information, though, has to be different. But I see where you were coming from, sis, right? And so it's a weird feeling. You know, no one's ever asked me that before, and it's a great question, but it is this constant state of, on one hand, I will not be given the same grace as everybody else in the room. Whether or not people, you know, my favorite line from people now is I voted for Obama, right? Whether people voted for Obama or not, we are not the same. You do not treat me the same. And even if you treat me the same in this room, nobody else will treat me the same in the hallway. So I'm still always at a disadvantage, no matter how good your good intention is, right? I really focus on the people who will give me grace when I mess up.
Yeah.
Because those are the people that are going to save me from a career perspective. And so I'm always in this constant space of, and whether this is bad or good, like this, I don't think that I'll ever be in a space where I'm 100% comfortable in a work environment. I'm always in a constant state of discomfort. And I'm always looking for people that will be that safe space for me. So I have the grace to continue.
We naturally seek them out. As a matter of survival and growth. But also I wanted to lift up that one thing that is not being said, but that is glaringly obvious to me, and that is you show up as coachable. It's hard to listen when people grab you and pull you in that conference room and you get defensive, and even if in your humanity and your grace, right? The initial reaction is to, whoa, I didn't do that. Like, being able to listen and have them know that they are pouring into you and that it is you're filling up and not just a hole in that bucket that they keep pouring into. That also makes a difference, though. That also makes a difference. And that's not always the case. And so I wanted to just lift up that if anybody is in a space and that you find that person, listen to them and honor them by taking the coaching, if it's appropriate. You know, you don't want somebody, I say you should go cuss that boss out. But if it's appropriate and if you can see that they're pouring into, because they'll just keep doing it because they see that it means something and there is value in them spending their time to pour into you. And so I wanted to make sure that I named that because that's something that we have to also understand, right? There's grace. I don't get grace. And but when you do get it, you better make sure that you are honoring the person who is given to you, whether it is Black, they are Black or white or whatever race, male, female, whatever gender, whatever it is, there's something about somebody taking their time. They see you in a way that they feel it's worth it and it's meaningful to do.
No, I agree. And thank you for saying that, because that's really true. I think it's interesting that how we develop in societies where people think feedback, we have people who think feedback is always bad. So they don't want to they're closed off on it. But then also, two, people who think that they can just say anything they want and call it feedback.
Yes.
I had to learn in my career, I'm not going to lie, I have not always been good at receiving feedback. And the reason why my issue, according to therapy, my power and my kryptonite, right, is I'm the kind of person where I do not care what the feedback is. Okay. I always tell people whenever I have a new manager, I literally give them this example to advocate for myself. Because you mentioned like, tell me about you. I tell them a little bit about me. And then I'm like, so this is the kind of person that I am, just FYI, right?
Mm-hmm.
My natural inclination is this. You can tell me whatever you want. It's how you put it on the plate.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so what most people don't know about me is that I spent a lot of my childhood doing auditions, a lot of musical theater, some Broadway stuff. So since I was at the age of 5 or 6, I've been called everything but a child of God.
Mm-hmm.
It is a rare occasion for someone to say something that I have not heard about myself. When you are 7 years old and you are auditioning for the national tour of Annie, there is not a lot you can say to me that I have not heard at 7. And we can talk about the possible PTSD of that. But the point is that I was raised in an environment where I always receive feedback. And one of the best things about that environment was that even at a young age, I knew I can't lash out or else I may not get this part. I may not get my end goal if I cuss you out and say you're wrong.
Yep.
So if you put that into an adult context, right? Because this is not Broadway. This is not the stage, okay?
Yeah.
I'm always the person, and I say this, if you're going to give me feedback, do not put it on a trash can lid.
There you go.
How in which you give me feedback when I was in my 20s determined how I responded. It was never the actual feedback. And so in my early 20s and my mid 20s, what I was fighting a lot and getting in trouble a lot at work was I responded in a way that you didn't like. And then my response would be, but you gave it to me on a trash can lid.
Yeah.
How my brain interprets that is that you did not think about how you wanted to give me this feedback. You do not respect me enough to give it to me in a way that you want me to receive it. You just want to stand here and trash me and make me feel horrible. So I had a lot of fights in the early stage of my career because I wasn't fighting the feedback. I was fighting how in which you gave it to me. Every time someone gave me feedback in the respectful way, I honored it. And I had a woman in my career who sat me down one day and actually explained it to me like that. And here's the fun fact. She said, the issue with you, Lexi, is that as you fight them for giving you the feedback the wrong way, they're going into other rooms and saying, Lexi does not take feedback, which is inaccurate. I do take feedback. You just brought a knife to a gunfight.
Yeah.
And then I upped you with a bomb. I didn't start it. Right? But that wasn't the narrative that was going out. Lexi has a bad attitude. I don't have a bad attitude. I just said, we said we were going to water fight. You brought a knife. And then I brought a bomb because this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so I had someone that sat me down and made me look at it that way. And her point was, you will never be able to control how people give you feedback, even when they're wrong. You can control how you respond to it. And so I've had to learn since my mid-20s a few things. One, that's my trigger. You have to identify your trigger to be able to do better. Yep. I had to learn, oh, that is my trigger, right? I had to learn how to take 3 seconds and breathe when someone gives me feedback on a trash can lid.
Yeah.
Because again, they were wrong, but how I respond. And then I've had to learn how to respond to trash can lid feedback in a professional way, which is I don't care, but thanks, right? The last thing is that I've had to learn how to advocate for myself. And what that looks like is every time I have a new manager, telling them that. Because everybody's different. And so in the name of grace, my triggers are not your triggers. And I'm only going to understand your triggers unless A, you just tell me, or B, I hit them and then you react. And then I'm like, oh, I guess I shouldn't do that again. And so I've had to learn how to honor my triggers while also working on how to respond when someone clicks that button in a much more palatable and respectful manner. But then also I've had to learn how to advocate myself and let people know what my triggers are. So now you can't say that you weren't warned. Right?
Absolutely.
And it's always this balancing act of all of those things, but that really is adulting. I think that when you're in long-term committed relationships, you know, I got married a few years ago and I was like, wow, whoa. You don't know, right?
Yeah.
About how to communicate your needs, how to communicate your triggers to your spouse, because they don't know.
Yeah.
I've had to learn the art of good intent. And don't get it twisted. There's a lot of bad intent out there, right? But just the art of breathing and not reacting because someone clicked a trigger button. Because it doesn't matter if they meant to click it or they didn't mean to click it. I always tell myself, the narrative after we leave this room is not going to be that you got an undeserving professional beatdown from me.
Yeah.
That will not be the conversation.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that's also part of growth. Yeah.
So I want to play angel's advocate for a second.
Go for it.
So you talk about it's important for me to, and I think this is for everybody, by the way, right? How you present the information is a game changer on how it's heard.
Yeah.
How does that jive with how Black women are required to present things in a way that is, you know, okay, I just want to say you have your knee on my neck. Just wondering, no problem, but just wondering if you know, like, how do those two worlds look for you as together or clashing?
I think just like sexuality, that's a spectrum. It's a spectrum, right? I know that I've had to take, and I continue to take hits in the corporate setting because I am a Black woman. I've had to learn the art of picking and choosing my battles, right? The older I get, the more into myself I get, right? As every birthday passes, I always tell folks I love getting older because I feel like every birthday I wake up and I'm this feeling of like, ooh, this dress just fits a little closer to how it's supposed to fit. The closer I get to that, though, I always tell people the more that I don't care about how I'm looked at in the world.
Yeah.
Because regardless of what I look like, you're still going to have an issue. Right? I think the importance of like the example you gave of when it's really bad and I no longer do the thing of like, oh, I'm sorry, my bad, you're actually hurting me. How I decide to work in these spaces is I'm always like, what is my end goal? So I always tell people how I respond to you is not because somebody blessed you with saving. It's because my response aligns to my end goal. No one is going to run me out of a job or an opportunity that aligns to my end goal. And this is a daily, constant practice. I am not perfect in it. But I always tell people, especially Black women, one of the issues that we have is that systemically we have been kidnapped of dreaming, right? Like that's what colonialism did. And so when you actually look at the historical context of how, you know, Western society was built, it's built on the backs of Indigenous and Black people, specifically Indigenous and Black women. And one of the ways to dehumanize people is literally kidnap their idea of dreaming. What do you want to be when you grow up? Right? And I didn't understand that until I think the end of my 20s. And so when I started actually doing the work, not to fight people, but to do the work to be, okay, before I walk into this room and fight, because fighting is also a spectrum. Fighting is silence. Fighting is physically fighting. Fighting is verbally fighting. Fighting is just walking away. It can be so many things in your toolkit, right? What is my end goal? Every decision that I make at work, every reaction that I make at work, always before I react, is what is my end goal here? And usually when I can have that conversation with myself, and I have that conversation with myself every morning, to remind myself why I'm here. Because like you said, it's hard to do it in a 6-second moment, right? I find that my reaction is a strategic reaction to my end goal. And that does not mean that because of that strategy, I'm not getting hit. That does not mean because of that strategy, I'm not sad, I'm not mad, I'm not leaving the room and I'm not screaming in the bathroom or calling my friends and talking about it and venting. What it does mean is that my end goal is so much bigger than your oppression. And I refuse as a Black woman who literally is a descendant of Black women in slave bodies who were not allowed to dream, right? Or were required to dream in secret. I refuse to dream in secret. So what we're not going to do today is you're not going to put me in a position where I react in a way that takes away from a dream that I've decided to live loudly. And that's how I think about it.
Okay, well, let's pivot a little bit. What about, and I know that this is before I say it, I know it is an outpicturing and a legacy of historical enslavement, oppression and enslavement. But I want to talk about Black women against Black women and how Black women that dream are seen a certain way, or when you are in an environment where nobody's dreaming and you start to catch your dream and you want to go fly, and those that you leave behind may have a different narrative about, right? There's a lot of dynamics, but that's just born and it's just you know what I'm saying? Legacy. I guess that's not the word I want to say. You said, give me a word that it's just a result. I'll just say that of that whole of it all. And it's not the system of enslavement is over, said Tyree, said George, said we're still looking at it. So we don't even have the opportunity to look at it as something that happened and begin our healing process.
Right.
So then you have people who harm women. I know Bill Cosby was R. Kelly, like these people who harm Black women or women in general with Bill Cosby, but like Black women specifically. And there was this divide between Black women who were like, what, are you kidding me? This guy is what are we thinking? And others who are getting his name tattooed on their bodies at the same time, right? So I'm just kind of painting like a big, broad picture and how this plays out in personal life, in the professional life. How do we as Black women understand the system that we're fighting each other under? And it's not about that other Black women. It's about the system that has you perceive them in this way. Yeah.
I think number one, all skin folk are not kin folk. Okay.
Say it all the time.
Just because that you're Black and I'm Black and you identify as a woman and I identify as a woman does not mean that we are going to be friends. We're going to be best friends. And we can still be part of the freedom fight. I could be more militant in this aspect. I do not have time for people that are white supremacists or conform to white supremacist ideology, regardless of what color they are. And I will say that again, especially in the wake of Tyre Nichols. I think a lot of people don't understand that you don't have to be white to uphold white supremacist values. It is a system. A system is bigger than a people. Okay. And so what I do is that I'm always open arms for Black people, especially Black women. When you start showing me forms of white supremacy or anti-Black womanhood, even if you are a Black woman, I slide to the left. And I'm okay with that. I can let you go and give you a hug because I want you to be great, but you don't have to be around me. And that is not the freedom fight that I conform to. I think we do need to have more conversations about it. I think that we get burned because we immediately assume because this person has a few identity layers that are aligned to me means that we believe in the same thing and we don't. Okay. Black is not a monolith. And on one hand, that can be a beautiful thing. Black people come from all over the world, which is why whenever I do speaking engagements, I always define myself as a Black woman, a Black American woman whose history is rooted in the enslavement of West African bodies. I say that not to get historical. I say that because the woman next to me can be a Black woman from Brazil, or be a Black woman from Cuba, or be a Black woman from London, or be a Black woman from the many countries in the motherland. And so therefore, knowing where we come from can help understand the different angles that we also come from in this world. With those angles, though, and the beauty of those angles comes different people's ideas of how in which they walk in the world. When I start seeing that breakdown with me and another Black woman, I lovingly walk away. I will not be part of organizations, of thought, of systems that continue to oppress Black womanhood. I will not be a part of it. And so if that's something that you want to do, I'm not the person for you. But again, from a selfish perspective, all skin folk are not kinfolk. Right. Especially in the corporate world. So you really have to do your due diligence with people, regardless of what they look like, before you establish a safety net around you and that person. And that's just called selfish protection 101.
I want to talk a little bit about this idea of when you are, okay, I'll give you an example. I have a client right now, and it's a few Black women at the leadership table of this organization. And they said, hey, we have our own set of issues. Can we talk to you, and can we have our safe space to unpack? Because what's happening is the leadership team is going, hey, folks of color or Black women, do your thing. And we want to empower you to be a voice and be a model for our vision. And they say, the vision is great. We will do that. But the folks, the people who are on the folks of color in particular, who are doing direct services with the community, are saying, y'all are, they've been called Auntie Tom, Uncle Toms, and right? Yeah. Because they're seated in a position where when they have to call for accountability, it's seen as, oh, you're not down with the people. When they have to let go of someone who is not performing well in their person of color, they get called out or called in, which is another show. And what they're realizing, and what one of them voiced a couple days ago, is this. This is not a Black, it is a Black women conversation, sure. It's a racial conversation, sure. But what happens is people get racial justice and social justice conflated, or they think that they're the same thing, and they're very not, right? So they're finding themselves being called out and having these hard, I'll just say the call out culture and the cancel culture of, you are a thing. We have labeled you a thing. And until you do these finite set of things that we say are the things to demonstrate that you're not that thing, until you do that, you're going to be in a world for hurt, and we are going to keep pounding on you. So there's this piece around grace of women of color in leadership, where they're in this weird middle position to answer to and support and lift up, but also to uphold the vision and the mission of an organization.
Yeah, I think one that the higher up you get in your career, and this is just my feedback for regardless of what color you look like, the higher you get up in your career, you're going to unfortunately have to be prepared to be crucified. If you are not prepared for that, you cannot be in a position of power. In a corporate space, in a nonprofit space, you can't be at the top. And so if that's something that you cannot handle, as mean as this sounds, you shouldn't be there. Everybody wants to blame somebody. And somebody has to make hard decisions. And someone has to be accountable for those decisions, because many decisions that you make, they are going to help some people / profit, and they're going to hurt a lot of people and a lot of profit. So I'm also very big on, like, If you can't sit on the heater, you need to get out the game. Okay. With that said, also, number two, I'm very big as a Black woman in leadership that I will not be the person taking the hits for this company. Company was not my dream. I didn't make up the company. At the end of the day, I do not have the salary that supports me taking these hits, right? So the salary that you have paid me, the title that you have given me, I have, when I sign my contract or offer letter, I am saying that I am 100% okay with taking the hits that I deserve to take. I do not sign up for extra hits. And I say that because I do think many times a lot of corporations, people in leadership, put Black women in a position to take hits that they don't need to take. And I always tell people that my job letter says that I work in X department, that I do X stuff. I get paid to take the hits for X stuff. I'm not taking hits for your stuff. Okay. And I do think that sometimes Black women are kind of bamboozled into taking those hits. And what it looks like is, you go speak to the people. You're good at that. So I'm also very big on those boundaries at work.
Yeah.
I think as far as, it's funny, I had this conversation a few days ago of how difficult it is to be a Black woman and be a manager, especially to other Black bodies.
Okay, we're going to go here. We got to go here.
I'll give you a good example. My last company, I had a job open to work for me, and I gave it to my community, to Circle. I said, here's the job information. Let me know if you want to apply. I am the hiring manager. I had so many women want to interview. It was like 40 women, and I don't usually do that. That's a lot of people to talk to. Okay. Remember, I need this rec to be filled. I need the work to start.
Right.
But because I am the head of this organization, and because many of these 40 people came from that, I said, I will meet with each and every one of you. And it was interesting in the interviews how it went. At first, it was praise for me, which is very uncomfortable, but appreciated. And then we did the interview. And then I asked them, do you have any questions? And a lot of them would say things like, I would just love to work for you. And so I would say, why? And they'd say, well, like, I know about you because of this, and it would just be so cool. And I told each and every one of them, I said, I would like to preface this with, the manager Lexi is a little bit different than the Lexi that you see. And that doesn't mean that they have a lot of similarities. And I had to tell every woman that, because I did not want them to get into a situation with me where if they were hired, Lexi's mean. I'm not mean. I expect what I expect. Right? We had a situation in the group last week where someone wrote in the group how they wanted to give the manager, who's a Black woman, a present because this particular person who works for the Black woman, just started working for her, referred her friend who's a Black woman to the role. And they wanted to give this woman a present to say thank you. And I immediately, first response, and I said, the biggest present you can give this Black woman is doing your job and doing it well.
Yeah.
You are not friends. And I think we have to have those discussions even insulated in our community. It's not saying that Black woman doesn't want to be your friend, right? It's saying the biggest gift that we can be ourselves at work while we work together is do your job. Do your job. Let me know this person does not like me. That's great information, but do your job. You have to stop glorifying and putting Black people on pedestals when they have yet to show you they should be on one. Do your job, because that Black woman, whether she's skin folk or kinfolk, she has to navigate a whole lot that you have to navigate. And she hired you because she thinks you can do the job. Do the job. Listen to her, right? But then the flip side is that if it's not working out, it's not working out. And sometimes you have to decouple the conversation. Not all skin folk are kinfolk, and not all kinfolk are for you. And I think what's happening in our community is that because we get hit from so many angles every day, that when we see another Black woman in power, we just assume that they are our savior. And what I'm always trying to tell people is that when you see another Black woman in power, you can give off respect and pleasantries, but until you have an intimate working relationship with them, do not put them on that pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Black women in power. Sometimes we have to be in situations where we have to lovingly let someone go and be prepared for that. Again, if you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen.
Yeah.
And be prepared for that. And also, because people are people and emotions are valid, unfortunately, sometimes we have to be prepared for them being very, very angry and calling us everything but a child of God.
And also, you know, the ways in which I talk about this concept of holding people big versus holding them small.
I love that.
And what essentially I'm saying is that when you hold somebody big, you are holding them as if they are capable, if they can take feedback, if they can hear you, and if they can rise to the occasion. When you hold them small, there's this coddling thing. And what I find is that a lot of Black women in particular, because this instinct to nurture and to care for.
Yes.
So, but, you know, we bring folks in and we overcorrect to either just giving a lot of Black folks a pass. You know, Tyree, God, you know, okay, just go home, girl. Just, you know, you don't have to do that deadline. It's hard. Or, George, you know, we know that it is psychological warfare. You know, I've often said that I think that Black people should get hazard pay to live in this country because of the emotional, mental, psychological, spiritual toll just for being Black. I think just to walk the planet, you should get some kind of hazard pay. But I agree. That's my whole thing. But anyway, I feel like as Black folks, or as Black women in particular, we overcorrect to just giving people a pass, and they're not growing and they're not learning and they're no better and actually worse off than when they started working under, you know, this leader or manager. Or we say, you know what, it's going to be 10 times harder out there in the world. So I'm going to grind you 10 times harder. I'm going to push and I'm going to push and set you up for being able to be resilience. Right. And so, but that's operating in the racist.
Yeah. And the white supremacist mindset. I'm going to beat you until you stop saying Kente and call yourself Toby. Right. But I also think, and every Black person that I've managed or been in contact with where I'm in a different position than they are, I always tell them that my job is to make you better than what you were before you saw me. Mm-hmm. I say that to every person who I lead, regardless of what they look like. Mm-hmm. I can't coddle you because I can't be your manager forever. You don't want me to be your manager don't you forever.
Yeah.
But what am I out here doing, not preparing you for the next step for you?
Yeah.
But also, in the name of grace and patience, I'm not going to beat you down 10 times more because of what you look like. I'm not going to beat you down, period. Because I think that part of being a great manager is letting people know that when they make a mistake with you, you will help them get back up. Mm-hmm. Until they make a mistake where we just can't forgive that one, if they're continually making the same mistake and they're not learning, separate conversation. But as a manager, my job is to create this safe, insular, little cocoon for you with me, where you can mess up, you can act a fool, you can fall down, and then I can pull you back up and go, okay, cool. So how are we going to do this better next time? Mm-hmm. And then as somebody who reports to me, your job is to show me you can do it better next time. Mm-hmm. Because I can only make you better when I know what's going on. I never want someone to be in my realm and work with me, work for me, work above me, where they just feel like they can't come to me and tell me what happened because they're terrified of my response. Mm-hmm. Don't do anything illegal. Don't say you did it. And tell me first. That's it. That's it. Tell me first.
Yeah.
Don't have me in situations where I'm shocked.
Yeah.
Right? Those are my rules. Don't do anything illegal. Don't say you did anything illegal. Come to me and just tell me first. Mm-hmm. This is not rocket science, right? I work in corporate worlds We are not curing cancer. We are not curing AIDS, right? Maybe, and actually, maybe we should be, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always want to create a space for whatever you look like. You're like, you know what? I'm going to go tell Lexi. I'm going to tell her that I messed up. I'm going to tell her how I think I messed up. I'm also going to tell her about these other people who messed up. And then Lexi and I are going to figure it out. That's the job as a manager. That's the job as a leader. But a lot of times we have people that do not know how to lead. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we have individual contributors who have been in situations where either A, they've tried to tell the truth before and gotten burned. So now they don't tell me the truth, right? Or also just don't know how to advocate for themselves. It goes back to self-advocacy. I tell everyone that I work with, the biggest self-advocacy you could do is tell people what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the biggest self-advocacy you could do at work.
Yeah.
The biggest advocacy you could do at work is be like, Michelle, I don't know what's going on in this meeting, like real talk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because at least for me, I put so many eggs in my basket about being a phenomenal manager and leader that I'm always like, there's not a lot you can tell me that I'm going to get like insanely upset about.
Yeah.
But the more you tell me, the more that I can help you dust off the wound, push you back on that stage, and we can make adjustments. And then you get a standing ovation. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
What about white women and Black leaders or co? It's really, really, really interesting. I'm a person who, I'm humanity first. So if a white woman is having a problem, I feel like I have the discernment to know when those are manipulative tears or when those are tears of shame and embarrassment or like frustration or a real human emotion because you've done something to cause harm. Like I feel like I can kind of gauge based on the situation, based on the history, based on the relationship, all those things. Mm-hmm. What about that dynamic that seems to constantly loop of Black woman says something to white woman has a reaction and says she doesn't feel safe or whatever it is. Black woman either gets smaller or gets bigger. And if she gets bigger, then there's more, more threat of job security, all of that, right? I see it all the time in my field. And so can you talk a little bit about any for someone who has a white woman who is showing up problematically and it's costing you your ability to even communicate because they're so now afraid or whatever it is, whatever the dynamic is, it's just weird. And there are a lot of them. Any thoughts or anything that you want to share with folks about how to navigate those things?
Yeah. I'm still trying to navigate that. I will say this. I read a book when COVID hit, right? Well, I think 2019, like right before COVID hit. And then I reread it during COVID by this Black woman professor who works at Berkeley, who teaches at Berkeley. She's phenomenal. And I forgot her name. She wrote a book called They Were Her Property. And I highly recommend it to everyone. I tell people that I highly recommend it to Black women in professional spaces having to navigate this. I always come from a historical place to my detriment. And so this book is pretty large. It's a heavy read, but high level, this professor decides to do a lot of research on the transatlantic trade of enslavement, but from the view of white women. Because I think many times in general, when we talk about that time in our history, the face of it is a white man. So she decides to spend, I'm sure, a few years being like, where were the white women? Let's talk about that, right? And she writes this very detailed book with a lot of examples that here's the cliff note, here's the TLDR. White women are oppressed too. White women are not Black. They're not Black men and they're not Black women. So when you look at the spectrum of oppression, they are keenly aware of their oppression. Everybody's aware of their oppression, okay? And in that same vein, They are trying to either free themselves because that's the only oppression they know, or they're trying to align themselves to white patriarchal supremacy because that's in power, right? And we see all the time. You see kids at school. The bully is either somebody who was bullied, and so they're doing the same thing the bully did, right? Or they're trying to free themselves from something bad happening at home, so they're acting out. That does not negate the fact that they're beating you up. That's the reason.
Yeah.
And so in the book, she talks about how in which this shows up during the enslavement period in the Southern United States. And how it shows up is she's like, hey, did y'all know that white women legally could not own property? They could not own enslaved bodies. White men could, white women can't. But when they get married and their father gives them an enslaved body as a token, that's a gift. So how in which they showed their power was different. And so number one, well, because everybody needs to read that book. It like really changed the way in which I interact at work, because again, this is not chattel slavery in 2013, or as I like to call it, it is, but it just shows up differently. But I'm not dealing with that apples to apples dynamic. But I am dealing with someone who, yes, you are oppressed because you are a woman. You have been trained in certain ways to get what you want without overpowering the white man. In many of those ways, interestingly enough, are the extreme opposite of how I have been trained to go about life. So what's happening is that, one, we have a cultural narrative, like we're misaligned on culture, because how you walk in the world is different than how I walk in the world. What your mama taught you how to fight is different than how my mama taught you how to fight. So we first, like we're speaking different languages. Okay, bitch. So now I have to first understand your language, right? And then I have to figure out how to dance with you. And what I've learned in those things is, and I'm still navigating that, is one, I'm always clear about my triggers and what I expect. People laugh at me at work. I'm like, hi, my name is Lexi. I live in Oakland, California. This is how I like to be spoken to. Here are my triggers. I'm so excited to learn, Michelle, how you like to work with people. Like people laugh at me at work, but I'm like, I put you on notice. Right? Two, in Auntie Maya Angelou's voice, when people show you who they are, believe them, beloved. I take that scripture wholeheartedly. So when you show me who you are, especially at work, I don't try to change you. If you show me that this is how you're going to do things, you're going to undermine me. You're going to say that I spoke a certain way, right? I start, as I call it, receipting every conversation that we have. I do not get paid enough to change you. And if I was, that should come from your personal paycheck. And I wholeheartedly believe that. The company should not be paying that. You should. Okay.
Yeah.
And two, so therefore, I'm not going to sit here and try to change you. But again, you are not going to stop me from my long-term dream. So when you show me who you are, I do act differently with you. The work is still going to get done, beloved, whether or not you decide to act a fool. Whether or not you tell people that I yelled at you, right? I always tell people, I'm totally fine with being in HR all day. Let's go. Because I have receipts for days. What I also need Black women to do, and this is not partially our fault, is I also Black women stay ready so you don't have to get ready. I'm very big on that.
Yeah.
I do not live paycheck to paycheck. One, that's a blessing. Okay. Two, I stay ready so I do not have to get ready.
Yeah.
It is so much easier, Michelle, to sit here and talk about, I just don't mess with her anymore. I don't talk with her anymore. I say that about how I just try not to mess with you. But in reality, sometimes I can do that and sometimes I can't.
Yeah.
And like you said, the emotional toll, right? I stay ready so I don't have to get ready. And it's interesting that every Black woman leader that I have an intimate relationship with, they're always telling me behind the curtain, Lexi, stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
And by that, do you mean kind of stack your money or whatever, so if something happens, you can jump and go and you'll be okay? So yeah, because see, that's the difference when you that's called liberation, right? That's called freedom, where each day you go to that office by choice.
See? Boom.
If it's not a choice, then it becomes a prison. I mean, it's just like, I have to be here. But when you can choose every day, like, wow, I know I can leave right now. And I know at least for 6 months, I can figure something out. You know, my grandmother was big on that. Keep your little side, little something here. Just
side money. Yes, Grandma Michelle. Yes.
We'll talk about Black women in relationships. That's another show. But I do want to kind of talk about one more thing, and then I'm going to let you go. Like, I probably won't, but I'll try. How do you think that this idea of the strong Black woman and Black girl magic and all of those kind of concepts that we put on ourselves, like I'm strong, like the crown that you walk around the world bragging about your ability to take a hit of how strong you are, right? Yeah. How do you think that affects how others see us, how we see each other, how our partners see us? And I'll say specifically Black men, whether it's an intimate or whether it's societal, see us. Because you said something that was brilliant, and that was they are trained. You said white women are trained to get what they want in a way that doesn't require raising your voice or being violent or, you know, I forgot exactly how you said it, but
they are.
So how does the strong Black woman and Black girl magic play into that?
It's weird because I'm on two sides of it. On one side, if I ever had a daughter who would be Black, because both of her parents are Black, I want her to have Black girl magic. I want her to know that she can do anything and be anything she wants to be. I want my daughter to know that she can be Misty Copeland, Beyonce, Oprah, you know, and Michelle Obama in the same day. We can just do it, right? I want her to know all those things because no one else is going to tell her that. Yeah. And even the people that tell her that, when she walks in the world, so many other people, the number of people that are going to tell her she can't will always be bigger than the people that tell her she can.
Yeah.
I want her to know that she's strong because strength is what is going to set you free. It really is. Mm-hmm. Having the strength to say, this is what I want to do. Having the strength to say, and I'm going to do the work that it takes to get there. Not all the other work that people put on you because you're Black, but like the actual, like, oh, I have to learn this thing. I have to do these things, right? If she wants to become a doctor, you do need to go to med school, right? I want her to have the strength to be like, I'm going to put in the work to go to med school. And when I'm in med school, I'm going to put in the strength to study. So on one hand, I love it because I know that it fills my cup to this day. I know that I come from a strong line of Black women that did so much, that risked blood, sweat, and tears for me to get here. And so because of them, I am strong. I was born strong. On the other hand, specifically within our community, the issue is that people just assume that they're allowed to take advantage of my strength. And I have an issue with that. So what I'm doing now in my life is when you take advantage of my strength, you go. Because I also deserve to live a very soft life. I deserve to will my strength when I want to will it. I do not deserve to will my strength because you're requiring me to do it. And I'm very big on that in my personal life, especially, right? If I'm putting all this work into my dream, whatever that dream may be, and some of that work is just the oppression of being a Black woman, some of that work is actually like, you got to put in the work to do the thing, right? When I come home, I want a soft life. And I want a partner that totally supports that life. I want a partner that does not require me to have to be the strong Black woman, right? And so the older I get, I'm very big on that, is that like, do not take advantage of my Black girl magic because I also have the power to not allow you into my space to take advantage of it. And I think it's that duality, you know, on the internet right now, all these videos of women who are like, I want the soft life. And I fully support that. And I want that for them, especially Black women, because we've had to uphold so much, right? What I'm trying to navigate is I also really do love my strength. I'm proud of my strength. And like I said before, I'm proud of it. The most important thing is that all these Black women who have died before me. Many Black women, I don't even know their names.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what they looked like, but I know they were there.
Yeah.
Right? I always tell people Harriet Tubman is my patron saint. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not even Catholic, and I have a saint that I pray to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Me being a strong Black woman, on one hand, I love people in the world who try to take advantage of my strength or use it for their own advantage. That's what I will not do.
Yeah.
Because I can also be a strong and soft Black woman. And the beauty of that control and that liberation is I can decide when I'm going to show you that strength. The issue in the world is that we have people, sometimes even Black men, who on one hand try to require me to show that strength. And then in the same 30-minute conversation, complain that I'm not soft.
Yeah.
I will not tolerate that. So if we're going to have this duality conversation that makes no sense, then we're just not going to have a conversation.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. Yeah.
I really love what you said about the softness. And I have been peeping out the soft life thing that a lot of women, Black women, are talking about. And I just want to raise up to a lot of people who are saying, well, that when they're talking about soft life, they're talking about spas and travel. And there's a lot of different ways that people are showing up. And I just want to raise up that soft life does not take money. You know, it is not a privileged conversation. Soft life is just exactly what you were saying about choice. Right? About choice. So you can have a soft life when you are ready. So you don't have to get ready when you're ready, and you can move through life with the experience of choice. And I don't even think that a lot of Black women see softness as a choice. Not in this society. Not in this. So we're not even looking at it as an option. We are more geared and more aligned to this. Keep it pushing. Like, I'm grinding. I'm not grinding. I don't want to grind. What I do is I move, I excel, I frolic, as my sister would say. But
I love that word.
Oh yeah, she's a joy coach, so she's all about joy, for Black women.
Yeah.
And so her tagline is "Frolic in your magic." Right? We don't know how to frolic and be whimsical and be right. And that, I think that's all in the softness domain, because we have to, historically, we got to hold it down, keep it together, take care, but all of the things. So that it is a whole conversation. I'm going to have you back, because I literally have a list of questions here that I haven't gotten to. So we're going to have a part 2. But thank you so much for just showing up. And
thank you for having me. This was great. This is therapeutic.
Yeah, it is therapeutic. It is, because I believe, and I know someone's going to listen to this and go, yep. And they're going to find some freedom in saying, but I'm not going to do that. Or here's my boundaries. Or, what I need? This is how I need. This is my work love language. You want to see me perform and excel? Here's my love language. Right. And so, I am going to definitely ask to have you back. We're going to work all this out and come back for more. But we end every episode with a fill in the blank.
Okay.
Grace is.
Grace is knowing yourself. Knowing yourself deeply. Because when you know yourself and you can verbalize it to other people, you'll actually get to your soft life.
Yep. So good. So good.
Especially for Black women. When you know yourself, that's the grace. Give yourself grace and doing the work to know yourself. And also being okay with that.
And that's the boom, as you would say.
Being okay with just saying like, oh, I don't like that.
Yeah.
And when you can communicate to others, when you know yourself, you'll actually be very surprised how people respond to you. And then how you respond to their response. Because if you tell someone, I don't like chocolate chips, and they continue to put chocolate chips in your ice cream, you just gonna go to a different ice cream shop and also be totally at peace with it. Oh, okay, cool.
Totally at peace. And it doesn't have to mean that you're wrong because I didn't communicate it well enough. Maybe I should have said, maybe, or they don't get me, or they don't. Here's my conditions of satisfactions. No chocolate chips. That's it. That's it. That's all. And if you keep putting it in, then now what you're telling me is, one, you're not hearing me, or two, you are, but don't care. So, okay.
I'm going to pick up my bag and I'm just going to go across the street to the other ice cream shop and hopefully they will learn. Or better yet, I'll decide, you know what? I'm not really feeling ice cream today anymore.
Right.
That's what grace is to me. I want every Black woman to give themselves the grace and the honor. Know yourself. Yeah. So you can communicate that not only to the people that write your check, but the people that live with you, the extended family that doesn't, the ones that are problematic that you got to see at the holidays. Because we all got some.
Oh, hello. Boom.
Give yourself the grace to learn who you are and then walk in exactly who you are at all times. And the people that do not align with that, they will be let go. But the number of people that you will just they'll just breathe in out of nowhere. It's going to be so much more vast and deep. Not even going to think about that person from 5 years ago.
There you go. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for for listening in today. Lexi B. Thank you so much. We're going to definitely have you back. Listen, y'all, go check out lexib.com. Have her at your next conference, next retreat. Check her out. We got to be out here having these conversations. They're very important. And it's good to be seen and heard as Black women and have these conversations and reflection space with each other. So have a great rest of your week. We'll see you next week. Talk to you soon.